Alright, so today I want to talk about a few things. The League of Villains as a whole, and how Shigaraki became the GOAT. So, in episode 77 of My Hero, we saw one of the greatest moments in the series, and that is when Shigaraki gets his seemingly unexpected revenge against Overhaul in, of course, spectacular fashion. Now, this is a very important scene because it signifies not only the growth of Shigaraki, but also the League of Villains as a whole. Which goes to show you that the Overhaul arc didn't just serve as growth and maturing for our protagonists, but also our antagonists as well. It's in this sequence we essentially see the real League of Villains for the first time, as this is by far the most camaraderie they've ever had in the series by this point. It also shows the mutual respect they've gained for each other as well. Like Toga is willingly cooperating on the phone, making jokes with Mr. Compress, while aiding twice, and Shigaraki is actually encouraging Spinner by saying that what they're doing is necessary while not outright slandering Stain's will, which is what he probably typically do in the past, and also saying he's counting on his driving, so that's a growth moment right there. And then we have Dabi and Mr. Compress. They're being extremely compliant with Shigaraki and basically working perfectly together following their original plan. And this goes back to Overhaul serving as the device for this growth. But not only just him, but Magna as well. It's Magna's death that really brought the League together here, which is more or less truly shows the purpose of Magna's character in the end. That's something that a lot of people discussed, with many saying that Magna was a useless character who came and went quickly and whose death only served as shock factor. And while the shock factor is definitely true, there's much more to her. Now, while she didn't get nearly enough time in the series, it doesn't mean that she was useless, because her purpose was to ultimately bring the League closer together. Magna was one of the surviving Vanguard members to stay with the League after the training camp arc, and had more time to develop with them, who was still very green at that point. But when Magna was killed by Overhaul, it truly changed the League. Like, despite them being psycho and sociopaths, they were affected by it. But it was also the fact that she was killed by a villain and not a hero that really put things into perspective for them. It showed that it just wasn't them against hero society, but them against the entire world. And this brought them closer together as somewhat of a dysfunctional family, I suppose, collectively wanting revenge for Magna's death and Mr. Compress's arm, and realizing that they only really have themselves in the world. But let's go back to the Shigaraki Revenge scene, because this was set up in two previous sequences. When Shigaraki arrives at the Overhaul escort, he says in Shogi the point is to get the king, right? This is in reference to when Overhaul tried to play Shogi with Shigaraki, but also trying to explain his plan. But an important piece of dialogue to remember from this scene is when Overhaul says Shogi's interesting because you can use pieces that you take from your opponent. Overhaul said this because he was planning to take Kurogiri twice and Toga from Shigaraki, but that obviously didn't work out, as he only brought them closer together and wasn't aware of the revenge plot Shigaraki told to Twice and Toga. And in the end, it was Shigaraki that used his opponent's pieces when he took Overhaul's quirk-destroying bullets, which was the culmination of all of his work. This scene is then capped off amazingly by Mr. Compress taking Overhaul's arm in revenge for, Overhaul taking his. And then finally, Shigaraki decaying and cutting off his arm, leaving him unable to use his quirk, which requires him to make contact with his hands. And Shigaraki knew this was a much worse fate than death for Overhaul, who would now have to live the rest of his life the way he ultimately wanted to make quirk society. And then we see Shigaraki, Compress, and Dabi walking away with a screaming Overhaul in the background, signifying the growth of Tomura and the League, who now have mutual respect and understanding for each other. So this is going to be, unfortunately, like the last time that we're going to see the League in this season, pretty much for a while in the series, but it is not the end for them. Now, of course, I'm not going to go into spoilers in this video because we're just talking about Season 4 stuff, and I mainly just wanted to talk about everything that we've seen in the Overhaul arc so far, but this is truly the beginning for the League of Villains. Now, I won't say this is necessarily the paradigm shift for them, because obviously there is much more to come. But this is an extremely important part in the series for them. And like I said before, it goes to show that not only are the protagonists developing in this story of My Hero Academia, but the villains are progressing just as much. And they're also having their own character arcs and character development. Some of them even more so than, I would say, like the heroes and the students in a way. Well, that's pretty much it for the video today, guys. Let me know what you think about Shigaraki and how this awesome sequence played out with his revenge, which I think has definitely made him the GOAT, or at least one of them, because, you know, there's multiple GOATs in this day and age, but certainly was like almost like his coming out party. And while he does have many in the future, this was like the beginning of it for sure. I mean, like, this was almost like his I am here moment, but not exactly, you know, kind of like what All Might told to Izuku. But if you liked the video, guys, please give it a like. I also have a Patreon that gives you access to a weekly Q&A, and if you haven't already, please subscribe as well. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.